Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. FPL Consult here, and in today's video we have my Game Week 17 team selection. Now as of recording, I've already used my 2 free transfers to bring in 2 new players into my squad, and I'm also potentially lining up one more move that would be for a -4, and it depends on whether Matthias Cunha is banned for the Game Week 17 game or not. So more on that later on. Hopefully you guys enjoy today's video. If you do, please do drop a like, please do subscribe as well. And let's get on with the video. So for Game Week 16, a quick review before we jump into Game Week 17. I got a green arrow, about 10k places up now to 140k in the world. This has been now my 5th green arrow in a row. So I'm pretty pleased with that, but we're still not kind of breaking the top 100k mark. So hopefully by the turn of the year, with the kind of trajectory that we're on, each week increasing about 10 to 20k places, hopefully we'll get there before the new year. Total points right now, I've crossed the 1,000 point mark. For those of you who are way beyond me as well, drop in the comments down below how many points you're on. But kudos to all of you who have already passed the kind of 1,000 point mark. For those of you who are very close behind as well, the points are all very bunched up, so I'm very sure that you guys will get there soon enough. Now, game week points wise, I scored 55 points. And there's really not too much to scream about in terms of returns from my Game Week 16 team. And it's pretty much also why I was kind of only 1 or 2 points on a green arrow. Like, if not for maybe 1 or 2 points, or bonus points I should say, then maybe I would have dropped further down, right? So speaking about the returns specifically, there's really not a lot to talk about aside from the double Arsenal clean sheet that I have with Saliba and Gabriel. Going for Saliba continues to return because I did remember that we brought him in for Trent Alexander-Arnold earlier in Game Week 12 or Game Week 13. That has paid off really well. 2 goals from him so far and continues to keep a clean sheet there. But I do think like the performance from Arsenal was a little bit worrying. And Saka coming away with the blank was really not what we expected at all. So he gets 3 points only. Semenyo as well, only 3 points. Came off slightly earlier because a bit of a tight hamstring that he has. So he is a player that I've already sold, a bit of a spoiler, but I'll speak more about him later on and why I've kind of shipped him out of my team. As for kind of Salah, he came away with an assist, but no bonus points. Palmer blanked, but picked up 1 bonus point on Monday night. That came in very nice because it gives me an additional point because the captain's armband was on him. And up front, Cunha with the goal and 3 bonus. Jackson also with the same. And João Pedro with the blank. So João Pedro has been very disappointing, to be honest. Same with kind of Verbruggen in the goalkeeper position that I have. Brighton just have not been doing very well, but I do need them to turn their form around. And with the fixtures that they have moving forward, I just don't think I'd be in a position to deal with them. So the hope is that from Game Week 17 moving forward, they start to pick up form because they were looking very promising after the win against Man City as well as Bournemouth. But now it's just been downhill all the way. So hopefully we see something from them. But I have more pressing issues that I needed to deal with, and I'll share more in the Game Week 17 section. So for Game Week 16, 55 points. Let me know down in the comments below how many points you scored, and also what's your rank right now, because we are currently in Game Week 16. So it is kind of a decent enough point in time to think about, where we want to set targets for towards the end of the year. For myself, the rank target has been and always has been kind of top 10k, so we're really going to try and push for it this year. Hopefully we'll be able to get there, but let me know in the comments down below what is your kind of end goal for the end of the season. If not, let's jump into the next section. So before we jump into my Game Week 17 team, for those of you guys who managed to catch the transfer plans video earlier this week, you would remember that I kind of set a target that I wanted to put out all the videos that I usually do every single game week, which is transfer plans, transfer tips, and team selection out for Game Week 17, because I had a bit more time, or I thought I would have a bit more time on my hands, but unfortunately I got the content ready and everything, but I did not find time to kind of record the video. So unfortunately, I've had to combine the transfer tips video with today's team selection video, but hopefully it still gives you guys some value. And it is, of course, a point in time of the year where it is starting to get quite hectic. So I will try my best to continue to put out more and more content for you guys, and as best as possible, try to keep with the schedule that we have as well. So for Game Week 17, in terms of transfer tips, I did put out a post on Instagram asking you guys which players you wanted me to speak about the most. And I think the Enzo Fernandez and Amad Diallo comparison came up the most, and I think for good reason. Both of them are very cheap at 5.1 million for Enzo and 5.2 million for Amad Diallo. So I think when we're looking at these two players, firstly, the reason why I feel they're very popular right now is because players like Cunha are being highly sold for players like Isak, and the way to fund that move is potentially to drop Mbumo down to either one of these players. So that's why I feel these kind of two players here are particularly, popular right now. And I think for good reason when you look at the actual returns and output that they've kind of produced so far. 3 goals and 4 assists in the past 6 game weeks for Enzo Fernandez, and 1 goal and 6 assists for Amad Diallo. So for the price you're paying for them, this is incredible value. And I'll start off by saying that I honestly don't think both of these players will be able to keep up the kind of returns that they've been getting the past 6 game weeks. Now, I myself have brought in Amad Diallo. That may kind of cause this section to be a little bit biased into why I prefer Amad Diallo, but I'll speak as objectively as possible about both of these players. But I just do think, like, even with me buying Amad Diallo, I'm not expecting him to kind of continue returning at the rate that he is. Now, he's in really hot form right now, but it's just quite incredible at kind of 1 goal and 6 assists in the past 5 game weeks. That would be ideal, but my expectation for this kind of price point that I'm paying is really not that much. If he comes away with 1 return every 2 game weeks, I would actually be happy enough with that. So that's my expectation in terms of this kind of price point. Now, in terms of FPL assets of both of these players, I'll speak about Enzo Fernandez first. Now, Enzo Fernandez has already seen 144k transfers in, and you don't need me to tell you how good the Chelsea fixtures are. Everton away, Fulham at home, Ipswich away, Crystal Palace away, and Bournemouth at home. The fixtures are really, really good. Now, I think the perception that we have of Enzo Fernandez, or many of us had coming into the season, was that Enzo Fernandez is kind of a defensive midfielder, someone that plays as a double pivot, someone next to Caicedo, for example, or Lavia if he plays. But when I look at the role that Enzo Fernandez has kind of adopted over the past few game weeks, it's no longer as such. He's not playing a defensive midfielder role. He is very advanced, and I would say in terms of, average positions wise, in the last game that he played in game week 16 against Brentford, he was actually one of the players that were furthest forward in terms of attackers. So very, very promising in terms of a 5.1 player based off of the last few game weeks playing every single game. And also the fact that he's taking up very advanced positions, that gives him the opportunity to kind of pull off the shots that he's taking. 10 shots, 4 on target over the past 6 game weeks, and that has led to 3 goals, right? So in terms of XG as well, 1.25, and XA is 1.73. I think looking at the way that he plays based on the eye test, he feels more to me of an assist threat than he is a goal threat. But somehow he also has that knack of arriving in the box at the right time, knowing how to read the situation when the crosses come in, and just being there to kind of put the ball back at the net. So I think lots to like about Enzo Fernandez. And if all the reasons that I've said so far convince you that he's a better asset, I'm not going to put you off Enzo Fernandez. But when I look at Amad Diallo, the reason, or the main reason I feel why many people have transferred him in, 418k transfers so far, is mainly because I look at kind of Manchester United's, turn of form at this point in time, and I do think like this could be a turning point for them. Now, it's a great time because they've won Manchester City 2-1, and in the fashion that they've done, it's going to give them a huge amount of confidence. And you look at the fixtures that they have moving forward, Bournemouth at home, Wolves away, those are good enough fixtures. Newcastle, Liverpool is not great, but then there's Southampton at home after that as well. My intention with Amad Diallo is actually to rotate him with kind of Morgan Rogers on the bench. And I think if I did not have Morgan Rogers as an option on my bench to rotate with, maybe I would be swayed to playing Enzo Fernandez with the better run of fixtures if I needed to start him week in, week out. So I think one of the prerequisites for me is having someone to rotate with Amad Diallo when the fixtures get tough for Manchester United. But aside from that, I think Amad Diallo, naturally, the positions that he takes up is that of an attacking kind of player. Especially so if you look at the Man City game where he played as one of the front three or just behind Højlund, right? And I know that he's not going to play every single game week just behind Højlund. Like there are going to be game weeks where he's playing the wing back position, and we've seen that as well. And that's why his heat map is as such, where he had a bit of defensive duties as well. But I would say that in terms of his performances of late, and also bearing in mind the Garnacho and Rashford benching recently, he is, for me, at 5.2 million, someone that I feel moving forward is going to start week in, week out for Manchester United, who are turning a corner. And I think I want to be at the forefront of that and have a piece of that pie as well. Now, in terms of the kind of actual output that he has, I also do feel like he's a little bit more of a goal threat than he is an assist threat. And that is appealing to me as well when I compare it to Enzo Fernandez. 16 shots so far, 5 on target. He's taken 12 shots in the box. So I think in terms of how clinical he is, he's definitely not the most clinical finisher. But as you take more shots, you are going to get more opportunities to score for sure. XG wise, he's higher than Enzo in terms of the past 6 game weeks. And XA is where he really pales in comparison. So that may be the case, but in terms of looking at the actual output, it's actually converse for the both of them, where Amad Diallo has more assists than Enzo, and thereafter Enzo Fernandez has more goals than Amad. So it's interesting. But I think, again, when I look at the price point that they're at, you really can't go too wrong with these two players. I just feel for the time being, I prefer to go with Amad Diallo. Let me know in the comments below if you bought either of these two players, which one you bought. And if you're thinking of buying them and you haven't yet done so, which one are you leaning towards in the comments below, and also why it is the case. But if not, hopefully this kind of a comparison section was valuable in terms of information and kind of advice. But let's take a look at the next comparison that I have in terms of defensive assets. So the next comparison I have for you guys is Anthony Robinson and Lewis Hall. Now, these two players were very popular as well in terms of players that you guys wanted me to speak about, and I think for good reason. A lot of people are in the market for defenders right now, either because of a turn of fixtures or players like Ryan Aid-Nuri, for example, who's very highly owned, getting a red card and being suspended for game week 17, but also being back to kind of the suspension tightrope after that because he got a red card and not kind of his 5th yellow. So I think a lot of people are in the market for defenders, and that's why Anthony Robinson has already seen 381k transfers in, and Lewis Hall very close behind with 240 as well. So these two players, for good reason, are very popular defenders right now because they're cheap. Anthony Robinson's at 4.8, Lewis Hall's at 4.6, but not only that, they are performing at a very high level right now. So Anthony Robinson is coming off 2 assists as well. He did not keep a clean sheet against Liverpool, but to be fair, he played very, very well. And in terms of a eye test perspective, he really kept Mo Salah quiet. I mean, he is a very, very solid left back. So I do think that when I look at Anthony Robinson, not only do I think the Fulham defense is a decent defense to back for the next few, but also his attacking threat is very, very much there. So we'll get into the numbers in a bit. But for Lewis Hall, he is also coming off a very, very good performance in game week 16. 2 assists for him. So the 2 assists that he picked up over the past 6 game weeks was mainly in game week 16 where he's got 15 points. But I think owners of Lewis Hall would also say that they've held him for so long now. He was pretty much due a haul, no pun intended. But also in that his performance and also the way that he plays and functions as a left back, it's very likely that he would get assist points somehow or rather, and this has been coming, right? So 15 points for Lewis Hall. And I think in terms of looking at the fixtures of both of these players, I think this is where I favor Anthony Robinson a little bit more. Southampton in game week 17, right in front of us right now. Chelsea away is slightly trickier, but then there's Bournemouth, Ipswich, both at home, and Fulham are very strong at home, and then West Ham away. I compare that to Lewis Hall. Ipswich away is not particularly a very easy fixture. Like, I feel like this fixture kind of, paints a different picture when I look at how good Ipswich are in terms of a home force. So Newcastle also away from home, not a side that is very, very strong. But then when you look at the other 2 games that are highlighted in red, I guess, or maybe not red, slightly pinkish, is Manchester United and Tottenham, and both away. So what I'd say is that for Lewis Hall, fixtures-wise, his 2 toughest games in the next 5 game weeks are both away from home. So it's not ideal, and I also don't think they would keep clean sheets in there. And for me, when I buy a defender, the clean sheet points are the baseline, and then you go for attacking returns after that. You see what happened with Ryan 8 Newry. A lot of people were tempted with the attacking returns, but then the kind of baseline is that Wolves are not a very strong defense as we've seen so far, and it has been the case where over the course of people holding on to Ryan 8 Newry, I think he's only kept one clean sheet, and in the course of those game weeks as well, only getting one return. So I do think like when you look at defenders, I really want to back the clean sheets first. And in terms of clean sheet potential, I think Anthony Robinson moving forward is the one to go for. Yes, he costs a little bit more, 0.2 million, but I do think like it is worth that extra investment if you can go there. But if not, if you don't have enough money and you can only go for Lewis Hall, then what I would say is that he is the next best replacement. I mean, you look at the attacking numbers right now as we drill into them. 1.06 XA for Anthony Robinson over the past 6 game weeks and 0.93 for Lewis Hall. It's not a lot to separate, and attacking returns wise as well, it's very, very close. So I really like both of these players for what they offer as FPL assets. But I would say I back Anthony Robinson, and a bit of a spoiler as well is that he is the player that I brought in as my Ola Aina replacement. So for Game Week 17, this is how my team currently looks, and as I've mentioned, I've used my 2 free transfers already. The 2 players that I brought in were Anthony Robinson and Ahmad, and the players that I sold were Ola Aina and Antoine Semenyo in midfield. So I'll speak about the defensive transfer first. Now, as I've spoken for a very, very long time in terms of, getting a third defender spot nailed down for my team, I've kind of delayed the decision for quite a while already into buying a third defender because I was kind of rotating between Rico Lewis and Ola Aina. The weeks where Ola Aina has played, he has done pretty well and gotten me some clean sheet points, but Rico Lewis has been quite disappointing overall. In terms of choosing between which one I wanted to sell, I looked at the fixtures moving forward, and I think Ola Aina's fixtures were not as good as Rico Lewis, despite Ola Aina being better for minutes. So I've taken the risk here to sell Ola Aina for Anthony Robinson instead of selling Rico Lewis, because I think there will be game weeks moving forward that I would potentially want to use Rico Lewis, and also bearing in mind Robinson having the Chelsea fixture in game week 18 could be a week where I will want to bench Anthony Robinson, and that week happens to be the week that Rico Lewis has Everton as well. So I'm keeping Rico Lewis mainly for that rotation, but I imagine that majority of the game weeks, I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but I would rather start a Fulham defender over a Man City defender. So Robinson, Southampton at home is a great fixture for him, and he kind of adds a lot in terms of a third defender spot for my team because Saliba and Gabriel are pretty much nailed down in my squad. So having Robinson as my third defender, I'm very, very pleased with that. Now, as for Ahmad, the main reason why I've gone for him is, firstly, he's cheap. He's only at 5.1 million. Antoine Semenyo down to Ahmad gives me 2.1 million left in the bank. Now, obviously, not all of that money has come from that sale, but it has contributed to me having 2.1 million in the bank. And this gives me enough funds to do Cunha up to Isak with money to spare as well. So I'll speak more about that Cunha to Isak move in a bit, but mainly Semenyo down to Ahmad frees up money for me more so than Rodgers would. And that's mainly also why I've sold Semenyo. But I think when I look at the form that Semenyo is in right now, also not very promising. And I would say that in terms of rotating Ahmad and Rodgers, their rotation actually works pretty well. Right, so I've gone for Ahmad here for obvious reasons that I mentioned earlier in the video when we were comparing between Enzo Fernandez and Amad Diallo. But I think one of the reasons that I maybe did not speak about in terms of why I didn't go for Enzo Fernandez is also that by going for him, it would mean that I'm tripled up on Chelsea attack, which is not a position I would want to be in. As a Chelsea fan, that would be, great because I can cheer my team on. But I think in terms of an FPL perspective, I'm not the kind of manager that likes to go all in into one team because in football, anything can happen. And obviously, you can argue that the converse is also true, where if you go for Enzo Fernandez and Chelsea, absolutely do very well over the next few game weeks, then you could be in the money. But I would try to diversify my investments as much as possible, and that's mainly why I've gone with Ahmad here. Firstly, to diversify from Chelsea attack, I don't want to be tripled up on them. But also because I think Amad Diallo moving forward could offer very, very similar kind of returns to Enzo Fernandez, or even potentially outscore him, because by nature or by trade or position, Ahmad is playing in a more advanced position. So Ahmad here is the player I've gone for. So with these two players into my squad, they've added a lot of depth for me, because now I will have players like Rodgers and Lewis that I don't have to start. These players were players I was starting week in, week out previously. But now I look at Robinson and Ahmad adding depth to my squad. And I'm very, very pleased with kind of the players that I have at this point. So Verbruggen in goal, always going to start him ahead of Flecken, but he has been very, very disappointing. So hopefully he comes good in game week 17. The defense looks great. It's Saliba and Gabriel against Crystal Palace away, Robinson against Southampton at home. In midfield, Ahmad and the kind of triple premium midfield that many people already have in Saka, Salah and Palmer. More on captaincy discussion later on. Then up front is Cunha, Jackson and João Pedro. So I don't need to speak much about my forward line. The only player I want to speak about is Matthias Cunha. He is currently facing a charge from the FA. So we don't really know the status of kind of whether he's going to be suspended for a couple of game weeks or not. So based off of what I know, it is that he was charged earlier in the week. He has until Thursday to respond, and likely Wolves will appeal. And I do also feel like we will get confirmation as we get closer to the deadline as to whether Cunha is going to be able to play against Leicester or not. And I think I'm not in a position where I have to rush the Cunha to Isak move. I have money in the bank for that, and I have extra funds, kind of 0.2 to 0.3 more, such that another rise for Isak would not price me out of this move. So I want to give the move a little bit more time, mainly because Wolves have now signed a new manager, potentially a new manager bounce, against Leicester, who are a side that have been conceding many, many goals to the different opposition that they've played so far. And they're just a very leaky defense that even a team like Wolves, who I feel if on their day can get their attack right, Matthias Cunha could be the one that's going to benefit. So I don't see a rush for me to do Cunha to Isak unless we get news that Cunha is suspended. So the -4 for my team that I would take hinges on this Cunha news. So hopefully we'll get more news as we get closer to the deadline, and I potentially would make that transfer on the deadline stream. We'll see what happens. But that's the only other transfer that I'm thinking for my team. If not, Jackson against Everton, João Pedro against West Ham away, they're going nowhere. On the bench, Flecken, Rodgers, Rico Lewis, and Greaves. So we'll wrap up today's video with the captaincy algorithm as we always do. And for those of you new to the captaincy algorithm, it is basically a weighted average value of predicted points from 3 different sources. We give the different sources varying weights based on reliability, and we kind of aggregate the predicted points for all the FPL players in existence, and thereafter the players that come up with the highest predicted points are Palmer at 6.7, Salah at 6.5, and Haaland at 5.8. Now, I'll say first, as well as a caveat, the captaincy algorithm does not get it right every single game week. It is not something that you have to follow. It's just a guide in terms of captaincy where you might want to go. For game week 16, it failed miserably in picking Palmer, and therefore it was termed as a failure. But in terms of success rate wise over the course of the season, it has seen a 75% success rate. 12 game weeks out of 16, the algorithm picks a good captain, a high scoring captain. So for game week 17, it has picked Palmer, who has Everton away. Second in line is Salah with Tottenham away, and then Haaland has Aston Villa, who's third on this list. So I think when you look at the fixtures, maybe you would kind of argue that Everton are coming off a very strong performance against Arsenal. And also I do think they're quite a good defense of late. So I would say that maybe this week could be a week where I defer from the algorithm and I may not want to go for Palmer. I could potentially go for Salah against a slightly more leaky Spurs defense, with 6.5 algorithm points. I'll take it. And then there's Haaland against Aston Villa. So it's pretty close. This is a game week where it is a couple of algorithm points separating the captaincy picks that we have. It is not as great of a difference as we see in other game weeks, where sometimes captains or the first and second place is about 1 to 2 points of a difference. So there's no clear-cut kind of captaincy candidate, I feel, for game week 17. So let me know in the comments down below, who are you going for? And are you going to stick with the captaincy algorithm pick of Cole Palmer, who has obviously done pretty well of late, but they are facing a Everton side that are very strong from defense as well. So as of now, unfortunately, I haven't confirmed my captain. I will have to think about it a little bit more, and I will confirm it on the Game Week 17 deadline stream. So I'll catch you guys there, as always, 3 hours before the deadline. If not, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please do drop a like. Please do subscribe as well, and I will see you guys on Saturday morning. Bye-bye.